My name is Jewel Brandt. I'm 23 years old. 3 weeks after my leg surgery, my mother didn't even try to hide her intentions anymore. Right there at the Sunday dinner table, in front of my aunt, my uncle, and my brother Wesley's girlfriend Madison, she just came right out and said it. She slid the $48,000 settlement check, made out in my name, across the table to my brother Wesley. Then, loud enough for the whole room to hear, she said, "You're limited now, Jewel, but Wesley has a future. He has a life to build." She glanced at my crutches leaning against the wall and let out a soft scoff. "What are you going to do with this money anyway? Insurance covers your physical therapy. You don't need this." Wesley took the check and smiled. Madison kept her eyes glued to her plate. My aunt shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Nobody said a word. My dad just stared at his chicken like it owed him money. I didn't even blink. I took a sip of water and set my glass down carefully, the ice cubes clinking softly. "Sure," I said calmly, "go ahead and cash it, but make sure you read the memo line first." None of them noticed the phone resting inside my hoodie pocket. It had been recording everything for the last 47 minutes. That was their first mistake. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let's take a step back to where this all started. If you're listening to this and already feeling that familiar knot in your stomach, that mix of anger and disbelief when the people who are supposed to care about you the most show who they really are, take a second to hit the like button. If this story strikes a chord with you, please subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. And I'd love to know. Drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Now, let's go back to the beginning. It all started on November 15th, 2024 at 7:15 p.m. I was riding my bike home from work down Hennepin Avenue in Minneapolis. The bike lane was clear, I had a green light, my reflectors were on, and my headlight was bright. I was following every single rule of the road, and then a car door swung wide open. I don't remember the exact moment of impact. I just remember the sound, metal hitting metal, the frame of my bike twisting and my body hitting the asphalt hard. Then, total darkness. Next came the sirens, followed by white ceiling tiles, bright fluorescent lights, and a paramedic looking down at me asking for my name. "Jewel," I said, "Jewel Brandt." "Do you know what happened, Jewel?" Someone opened their door, I hit it. "Can you feel your leg?" I could. That was the good news. But when I looked down, my right leg was bent at a completely unnatural, sickening angle. The paramedic followed my gaze. "Don't move," he said. "We're taking you to Abbott Northwestern. You're going to be okay." I remember thinking to myself right then, Mom is going to be furious. I don't know why that was my very first thought. Maybe because I'd bought that bike less than a year ago. Or maybe because I knew she'd somehow find a way to make this accident feel like an inconvenience to her. Either way, as they lifted me into the ambulance, that was what occupied my mind. Not the pain, not my leg, just that my mom would be angry. The break was severe. A displaced compound fracture of the tibia. They took me into surgery that same night, placing a titanium plate and 6 screws during a 3-hour procedure. My orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Nathan Rodriguez, told me I was looking at least 6 months of intense physical therapy, possibly longer. He was kind and professional, explaining everything clearly, showing me the x-rays, and walking me through the recovery timeline. My mother didn't even show up at the hospital until around 2 a.m. She and my dad had been in the waiting room during the surgery, but I didn't see them until I woke up in the recovery area. The very first words I heard through the door came from her. "How much is this going to cost us?" Not, "Is she okay?" or "Can I see her?" Just, "How much is this going to cost?" When she finally walked into my room, there was no hug. She stood at the foot of the bed, looked at my heavily casted leg and said, "Well, this is going to be a massive financial drain. Insurance should cover most of it," I croaked, my voice raspy from the intubation tube. "Should," she repeated. "It's never that simple, Jewel, and you know it." My dad stood right behind her, completely silent. That was his usual role. I stayed in the hospital for 3 days. My mom visited twice. The second time was on November 17th, when she brought me a change of clothes and immediately brought up the settlement. "The driver's insurance company is going to have to pay out," she said. "They caused this. They are liable. You're going to get a settlement." I answered vaguely, "I haven't really thought about that yet." "Well, you should. This is serious, Jewel. This affects your entire path. You need to be smart about this money." I didn't say anything. I was exhausted and the pain medication made everything hazy. I just nodded. She stayed for 20 minutes and left without so much as holding my hand. On November 25th, a letter arrived from State Farm. The driver's liability was clear-cut. The estimated settlement range was between $45,000 and $52,000. My mom intercepted the letter. It was addressed to me, but she opened it anyway and read it out loud at the dinner table. $48,000, she said, her voice sounding like she'd just won the lottery. Finally, some good news out of this mess. I was resting on the couch, my leg elevated, my crutches resting nearby. I kept quiet. Wesley was there too, and his eyes lit up instantly. $48,000? That's a life-changing amount of money. That's Jules' money, my dad muttered quietly. My mom snapped a glare at him. It's family money. This situation has put a strain on all of us. I noted her choice of words. Family money. She said it so naturally as if it were an undeniable fact. 2 days later, I overheard their actual plans. By November 28th, I was back in the hospital. They'd readmitted me for an extra week due to an infection scare. I was in room 412, supposedly taking an afternoon nap. My mom was out in the hallway, on the phone with Wesley. She had no idea I was awake. $48,000, she said into the phone. The lawyer says the check will be ready within 6 weeks. We just need to make sure she understands that this is for the household. A pause. No, she's out of it right now. She doesn't have the energy to argue. The medication has her foggy. She isn't thinking straight. Another pause. Let me handle it. She'll sign it over. She won't fight us. She's never stood up to us a day in her life. I lay there with my eyes closed, the heart monitor pulsing steadily in the room. She had no clue I could hear everything. When she walked back inside, she tucked my blanket in with an almost sweet gentleness. Then I heard her whisper under her breath, "At least you're good for something now." That night, alone in that hospital bed, I opened my phone and searched for Minnesota's recording laws. The answer was clear. Minnesota is a single-party consent state. You can legally record any conversation you are a part of without notifying the other people involved. I downloaded a voice memo app, tested it, and played it back. My own voice sounded small and worn out. "My name is Jewel Brent. If you are hearing this, I am protecting myself." I saved the file to a secure cloud drive, closed my eyes, and went to sleep. When I finally returned home in early December, I stopped arguing about physical therapy bills, insurance claims, or the settlement. I agreed with everything my mother said. I nodded. I said okay a lot. I acted passive, compliant, and maybe a little slow from the lingering pain. But I was sharper than ever. I was watching every move. On December 1st, I was on the couch doing my physical therapy exercises, flexing my ankle and doing basic leg raises. My mom and Wesley were whispering in the kitchen. My phone was tucked right under the throw pillow, recording. "What if she says no?" Wesley asked. "She won't," my mom replied. "She's soft. She's always been soft. We tell her what's happening and she'll follow along." Recording number 1, saved, uploaded. On December 5th, my mom made me go to church with her for the first time since the accident. I didn't want to go. I was still on crutches and dealing with a lot of discomfort, but she insisted. "Everyone is asking about you," she said. "They want to see that you're all right." During the coffee hour after the service, she made sure to tell the story loud enough for me to hear from 10 feet away. Yes, it's been incredibly difficult. She can barely manage a few steps. The doctors say she might never fully recover. We're trying to stay positive, but we have to face reality. Her whole life path has changed. The poor thing. The church ladies nodded along, murmuring symphony. One woman looked at me with a heavy pity that made me want to disappear into the floorboards. Later, an older lady approached me. "Your mother is so strong," she said, "carrying a burden like this all on her own. You are very blessed to have her." "Yes," I replied, "very blessed." I didn't correct her. I just stood there leaning on my crutches, with my phone recording from my coat pocket. Recording number 2. Between December 8th and the 14th, I captured my mother coaching, rehearsing, and running drills with Wesley. On December 8th, around 7:30 p.m., I was supposed to be upstairs sleeping. They were down in the living room. "Don't say taking her money," my mom instructed. "Say for the good of the family. Don't say she's limited. Say her recovery doesn't require this much. Make it sound practical, even caring." "What if she cries?" Wesley asked. "Crying just means she's giving in," my mom answered. "Let her cry. She'll sign the papers in the end." Recording number 3. On December 10th, after the official settlement notice arrived, Barbara and Wesley went through it line by line, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. I snapped a picture of that pad later when it was left on the coffee table. It had bullet points in my mom's handwriting. Emphasize Wesley's opportunities. Mention Jules' physical limitations. Gently remind her of everything the family provided growing up. If she resists, bring up the burden on the household. Recording number 4 captured her saying, "If she fights it, we remind her of how much this cost us. Medical bills, missed work days, and everything we've sacrificed." On December 12th, they ran a full dress rehearsal. My mom played my part, and Wesley practiced his delivery. "Jewel, I know this is technically your money," he said, his voice sounding stiff, like he was reading from a script. "But think about my future, the investments, the path I have ahead. You're going to be restricted anyway." "Good," my mom interrupted, "but slow it down, make it sound heavier, more emotional, like you genuinely feel for her." Wesley tried again. It sounded much more convincing the second time. "Perfect," my mom said. "Sunday at 5:30, a nice chicken dinner, keep it casual. We want her to think it's just a normal dinner before we lay it all out." Recording number 4 captured every single word. On December 13th, I met up with Connor at a local coffee shop. Connor Morrison was a former coworker from my last medical billing job who worked in IT security. He was someone I trusted completely. "I need your help," I told him. "I need to secure my cloud storage, all my files, everything." He looked at me closely. "What's going on?" "I'm protecting myself," I said. "I need these files completely secure, encrypted, and hosted across multiple servers. I also need a dead man switch set up." "A dead man switch? If I don't access my account for 72 consecutive hours," I explained, "these files need to automatically go to 3 people. You, my doctor, and a third person I haven't fully decided on yet, but I'll figure it out." Connor set everything up for me that very afternoon. Every single recording I took immediately synced to the cloud, encrypted, backed up, and completely unalterable. "Jewel," he asked as we finished up, "what do you think is going to happen?" "I think my family is about to show me exactly who they are," I said, "and I'm going to have the proof." Later that evening, my mom called my Aunt Carol. I was upstairs with my bedroom door cracked open, my phone recording. "I need you and Jim here on Sunday," my mom said. "Just for support. We're having a family discussion about Jewel's settlement. Ever since the accident, she hasn't been thinking clearly. We need the family together to help her see what's best." There was a pause, and I could hear Carol's hesitant voice, faint and distant through the receiver. "Please, Carol," my mom urged. "I can't handle this burden alone." Carol agreed. Of course she did. My mom was always masterclass at playing the reasonable one. Sunday, December 15th, 2024, 5 p.m. I arrived early. My dad had picked me up since I still wasn't cleared to drive. The table was fully set for 6 people. The chicken was roasting in the oven, filling the whole house with the smell of rosemary and garlic. Everything looked incredibly warm, normal, and completely suffocating. Aunt Carol and Uncle Jim arrived at 5:15. Carol gave me a fragile hug like she thought I might break. Jim shook my hand. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I'm doing okay," I said. Wesley and Madison walked in at 5:28. Wesley wrapped his arms around me tightly. "Love you, sis," he whispered. I didn't say it back, and he didn't even notice. We all took our seats. My mom insisted I sit at the head of the table. "You're our guest of honor tonight," she smiled. At 5:13 p.m., before anyone else had even walked through the door, I hit record. My phone sat in my hoodie pocket, the microphone facing out. Dinner started off normally enough. We talked about the weather, Wesley's work at the gym, and my mom's church committee. Madison asked how my physical therapy was going, and I told her it was moving along. Everyone nodded. Then at 6:02 p.m., my mom cleared her throat. "So, Jewel," she began, "we need to discuss something important." The entire table went dead silent, like they'd been waiting for this exact cue. "Your settlement came through," my mom said. $48,000. It's wonderful, and we are all so grateful." She slid the check across the table toward Wesley. The check was printed on heavy, secure bank paper, the kind that's hard to duplicate. I could clearly see the State Farm logo and my name, Jewel M. Brandt. Wesley looked down at the check, then looked up at me. "Jewel," he said, using that soft, practiced tone from his rehearsal. "I know this is technically your money, but I've been thinking. I have these opportunities, business ventures, a real future ahead. And you're going to be restricted from now on." My mom jumped right in. "You're limited now, honey. We have to face reality. Wesley has his whole life ahead of him. He has a life to build." She looked over at my crutches resting against the wall behind me. "What are you going to do with this money anyway?" she asked. "Insurance covers your physical therapy. You don't need this." Madison stared intently at her plate, her fork frozen halfway to her mouth. I saw her shoot a quick, guilty glance my way before looking right back down. The recording later picked up her whispering to Wesley, "Babe, this feels wrong. Wesley, don't do this." Aunt Carol shifted around in her chair but remained silent. Uncle Jim cleared his throat. "Barbara," he said quietly, "this doesn't seem right." My mom shot him a sharp glare, and he immediately looked down at his own plate. Nobody else spoke. My dad just kept staring at his chicken. Over the course of the entire dinner, he said exactly 6 words. "Pass the salt," and "this tastes good." I took a slow sip of water. The ice cubes clinked softly against the glass. Every eye in the room was on me. "Jewel," my mom pressed, "say something." "What do you want me to say?" I asked. "Say you understand," Wesley said. "Say you'll sign it over." "Don't be selfish," my mom added. "This family has given you everything. Now it's your turn to support the household." There was a long pause. 8 full seconds. The recording captured the heavy silence perfectly. Just the sound of a fork hitting a plate and someone's quiet breathing. And then my mom delivered the final blow. "You're limited now, Jewel. What are you realistically going to do with $48,000? You aren't going to have the same opportunities as Wesley. Your place is here at home. Let's be realistic." Wesley reached out and picked up the check. Madison closed her eyes. Carol let out a tiny breath. Not quite a gasp, just a soft sigh. I set my glass down. "Sure," I said. "Go ahead and cash it." My mom smiled and Wesley let out a relieved laugh. They thought they had won. "But read the memo line first," I added. Wesley looked down at the check, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the paper. "It just looks like standard legal language." "Read it out loud," I said. "Payable only to Jewel M. Brandt," he read aloud. "Endorsement requires 2 forms of identification and a notarized affidavit of sole ownership. Any unauthorized attempt to cash will be automatically reported to the State Attorney General." He looked up at me. "We can handle that. We'll go to the bank tomorrow. You'll come with us, and you'll sign whatever they need." "Okay," I replied. My mom let out a deep breath, looking completely relieved. "Good girl, that's for the best. You'll see, Jewel." I excused myself from the table, claiming my leg was starting to throb. Nobody tried to stop me. I walked upstairs, locked my bedroom door, and stopped the recording. 47 minutes and 16 seconds. I plugged my phone into the charger and watched the file upload, encrypt, back up, and secure itself in the cloud. Then I lay back on my bed and stared up at the ceiling. I didn't cry. I just let the reality sink in. They actually did it. They really went through with it. Every suspicion I had, every fear I held onto was entirely accurate. I opened my notes app and typed, December 15th, 2024. Recording number 5. Contains evidence of financial coercion, discriminatory remarks regarding my physical limitations, a planned attempt to divert funds, and exploitation of a vulnerable family member. Witnesses present, Carol, Jim, Madison, Dad. All present, majority remaining silent. I saved the note and sent a quick text to Connor. "It's done." He replied almost instantly. "Oh man, are you okay?" "Yeah." "What's the move now?" "Now," I texted back. "I wait." On December 17th at 10 a.m., Wesley went alone to the Wells Fargo on Hennepin Avenue. Mom was at work. He thought it would be a walk in the park. It wasn't. The teller asked for identification, and Wesley handed over his own. The teller shook her head. "I need to see the ID for Jewel Brandt." "She's my sister," Wesley replied, his voice getting tight. "She's recovering from an accident and can't make it in. I'm cashing it on her behalf." "I still need her identification," the teller insisted, "along with a notarized affidavit authorizing you to handle the transaction." Wesley started getting agitated and demanded to see the manager. That's when Stephanie Marshall stepped in. She was a bank manager in her late 40s, incredibly professional. She looked at the check, read the memo line, and then looked Wesley dead in the eye. "Sir," she said, "absolutely no one else can cash this check except the payee. The memo line makes that entirely clear. Any attempt to bypass this could be flagged as a fraudulent transaction. I am required by our policy to document this attempt." "Document it?" Wesley snapped. "I'm her brother. She wants me to have this money." "Then she needs to come in person," Stephanie stated calmly, "with 2 forms of ID and a notarized statement. Otherwise, I cannot process this." Wesley stormed out of the bank. 15 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Stephanie. The insurance company had placed a security flag on my account and left her number as a contact. "Miss Brandt," she said, "someone just attempted to cash your settlement check. A male in his early 20s claiming to be your brother. I denied the transaction and flagged it. Do you want me to file an official report?" I was resting on the couch, doing my physical therapy exercises with the phone on speaker. "Yes," I said, "please document every single detail. I am also required to notify the insurance company, she added. They take potential fraud very seriously. Perfect, I said. By 2 p.m., Wesley and Mom burst through the front door, both of them absolutely furious. They stood over me while I lay on the couch. What did you do? Mom demanded. The bank wouldn't cash it. I didn't do anything, I said safely. That's just how the insurance company issued the check. You set us up, Wesley sneered. No, I replied. I told you to read the memo line. Mom's face turned bright red. Fine, we're going to the bank together tomorrow. You're going to sign the paperwork properly and transfer it over. Okay, I said. That one word, okay, did the trick. It quieted their anger faster than any argument ever could. Recording number 6, 18 minutes, saved and uploaded. The next day, December 18th, I called a legal referral service. I asked for an attorney who specialized in disability rights and financial exploitation. They gave me a name, Lisa Brennan. I scheduled an appointment for January 6th. It was far enough out to avoid raising my mom's suspicions, but close enough to get help before things escalated. This needs to remain completely confidential, I told the receptionist. My family cannot find out. Understood, she replied. Attorney-client privilege begins the moment you speak with us. Right as I hung up, my mom walked into the room. Who was that? The insurance company, I lied smoothly, just following up on my physical therapy coverage. Oh, good, she said. As long as I gave her a simple, submissive answer, she always bought it. On December 22nd, I received a call from Dr. Ashley Peterson, my primary care physician at Abbott Northwestern. Jewel, she said, I need to alert you to something. Your mother called our office yesterday. She demanded access to your medical records, claiming she needs to manage your care, and asked for documentation stating that you suffer from cognitive impairment due to the accident. I froze. What did you tell her? Nothing, Dr. Peterson said. HIPAA privacy laws strictly prohibit me from releasing anything without your written consent. But Jewel, she was incredibly persistent. She even brought up the idea of establishing a formal conservatorship. Conservatorship. The word felt like a bucket of ice water pouring down my spine. Did you log that call? I asked. It's fully documented, Dr. Peterson assured me. Time stamped for December 21st at 3:15 p.m. I wrote down her exact words. She said, and I quote, "My daughter isn't thinking straight right now. The accident has clouded her judgment, and I need proof of her impairment to protect her assets." I logged it because it raised a massive red flag for me. Can I get a copy of that log? I'll print it out for you at your next follow-up. And Jewel, if anyone ever questions your mental capacity, I will gladly stand up and testify. You are one of the sharpest, most clear-headed patients I've seen. I will say that under oath. Thank you, I whispered. One more thing, she added. To completely protect you, I want to perform a formal cognitive evaluation. If anyone tries to challenge your competence, you will have an official medical shield proving otherwise. On December 23rd, I went back to Abbott Northwestern. Dr. Peterson administered 2 tests, the mini mental state examination and the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. I scored perfectly on both. She handed me a sealed envelope. Keep this safe. If anyone challenges your competence, this is your armor. Inside, the official report read, "No evidence of cognitive impairment. Patient demonstrates exceptional executive functioning, memory retention, and decision-making capabilities." That night was Christmas Eve. My mom walked into my room and handed me a medical information release form, telling me it was required by the insurance company. I read through the text. It wasn't an insurance form at all. It was a sweeping medical power of attorney. If I signed it, she would have total control over my medical and psychological records. "No," I said, handing it back. "I'm not signing this. This isn't from the insurance company. Where did you get this?" She stammered, caught completely off guard. "You need someone to help manage your care." "I'm 23, I said firmly. "I'm managing my care just fine." She stormed out of the room. Recording number 7, 12 minutes. I snapped a photo of the form and texted it to Connor. "Is this legal?" "It's a standard authorization form," he texted back. "But if you sign it, she gets total control over your life. Medical, psychological, everything. Do not sign a single thing." I didn't. On January 6, 2025, at 10 a.m., I called an Uber and headed to downtown Minneapolis. I told my mom I was heading out for a physical therapy session. Lisa Brennan's office was located on Marquette Avenue, Suite 900. It was quiet, professional, and reassuring. I sat across from her at her desk. "Tell me what's going on," she said. "Can I just play something for you?" I asked. I pulled up the Sunday dinner recording and played the entire 47 minutes. Lisa's expression shifted around the 12-minute mark. By minute 30, she was furiously taking notes. When the recording finished, she looked up at me. "This is a textbook case of financial exploitation," she said, "and in the state of Minnesota, attempting to coerce a vulnerable adult into signing over assets is a serious legal violation." "How many recordings do you have?" she asked. 7 so far, I told her. She leaned back in her chair. "They are going to push harder, and when they do, they are going to make missteps. Keep recording. Track every single interaction. If they file for a conservatorship, which I strongly suspect they will, we will be completely prepared. Do you have a safe place to go if things get worse?" I didn't, at least not yet. "We'll figure that part out," she said reassuringly. On January 8th, Connor and I met up at another coffee shop. He upgraded my digital security and gave me a new protocol. "The dead man's switch is fully active," he told me. "If you don't check into your account for 72 hours, the entire library of recordings automatically forwards to 3 people. Myself, your attorney, and your doctor. You're protected, Jewel." I looked at him. "Do you think they would actually try to hurt me?" He paused. "I don't know, but we aren't taking any chances." On January 10th, my downstairs neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, knocked on my door. She was a kind widow in her late 70s. "Dear, I don't mean to pry," she began softly, "but I can hear things through the vents. The way your mother speaks to you, it's awful. If you ever need a quiet place to sit for a few hours, my door is always open." I didn't even know what to say. "And if you ever need someone to stand up in a courtroom and talk about what they say when they think no one is listening," she added, "well, I've lived a long life. I don't scare easily." I thanked her, and she squeezed my hand before heading back downstairs. Allies. I was building a circle of allies. On January 15th, the certified mail arrived. It was an emergency petition for temporary conservatorship, filed in Hennepin County Court, case number 27-PR-25-1893. Petitioner, Barbara Brandt. Respondent, Jewel M. Brandt. I read through the documents twice, my hands shaking. For the first time, a wave of real fear hit me. Attached was my mother's sworn affidavit. She claimed that my accident had resulted in a traumatic brain injury, leaving me with diminished capacity and highly vulnerable to exploitation. She listed 4 specific incidents of my supposed disorientation. December 20th. Left the stove burning for 3 hours, nearly causing a fire. December 28th. Forgot to take prescribed medication for 4 consecutive days. January 3rd. Got completely lost driving to a familiar location, calling her in tears and entirely disoriented. January 10th. Unable to recall details of a conversation from the previous evening. Every single word was a complete fabrication. On December 20th, I was at my physical therapy clinic the entire afternoon. I had an electronic sign-in sheet and witnesses. On December 28th, my phone logs showed automatic medication reminders that I checked off on time, every single day, fully time-stamped. On January 3rd, I wasn't even medically cleared to drive yet. I couldn't bear weight on my leg. My medical records proved it was physically impossible for me to be driving. And on January 10th, I had a full recording proving my memory of our conversation was completely flawless. She had made it all up. I called Lisa immediately. "She filed it," I said, my voice trembling. "She's trying to take over my life." "I know," Lisa said calmly. "I just received the notification. Here is how this plays out. The court will order an independent psychological evaluation. You are going to pass it with flying colors. We will submit Dr. Peterson's cognitive report, and we will present the recordings showing that her true motive is the settlement money, not your protection. What if the judge believes her? Then we will play the recording of her calling you limited and trying to divert your settlement money right at the dinner table. Judges absolutely despise predatory behavior targeting someone's recovery." Lisa paused. "Jewel, I need you to do something incredibly difficult. For the next 3 weeks leading up to the hearing, you need to be flawless. Keep going to your physical therapy. Log your recovery progress. Stay completely calm, professional, and cooperative with everyone except them. Can you do that?" "Can." "Yes," I said. On January 16th, I had an emergency meeting with Lisa. She systematically prepared counter-evidence for every single lie in the affidavit. We had ironclad proof, therapy attendance logs, medication tracking apps, medical documentation, and audio files. "This isn't just an abusive petition," Lisa noted. "This is perjury. She lied under oath on a legal document. That is a felony." "Let's add it to the file," I said. On January 22nd, I underwent the court-ordered psychological evaluation. It was conducted by Dr. Melissa Grant, a grueling 2-hour session involving cognitive tests, financial management scenarios, and decision-making assessments. At the very end of the evaluation, she looked up from her notes. "Can you tell me why your mother is seeking this conservatorship?" "She wants total control over my settlement money," I stated directly. "She believes that because I face physical challenges from the accident, I don't deserve the funds." "Do you have anything to support that claim?" "I have 18 individual audio recordings," I told her. Dr. Grant noted that down. Then, her tone softened into something less formal. "You are one of the most articulate, cognitively sound individuals I have evaluated all year. Your mother is going to face an incredibly uphill battle trying to prove you lack capacity." Her official report was submitted on February 1st. The comprehensive evaluation reveals absolutely no evidence of cognitive impairment, lingering traumatic brain injury traits, or diminished capacity. The respondent demonstrates exceptional clarity, insight, and executive functioning. The respondent is fully capable of managing her own affairs. This evaluator finds zero basis for establishing a conservatorship. Furthermore, the respondent provided credible evidence suggesting the petitioner's motives may be financially driven rather than protective. Dismissal is strongly recommended. Lisa texted me immediately. "We got the report. It's flawless. Now we wait for their reaction. They are going to panic." She was right. From January 25th to the 30th, my mom turned up the pressure. She came over almost daily, demanding that I sign a financial power of attorney to avoid going to court. Recording number 12 captured the interaction. "Mom, if you just cooperate, we can drop all of this. Sign the power of attorney. Give Wesley what he needs. Stop being so incredibly selfish." Me, "No. Mom, the judge is going to find you incompetent anyway. You're just making this harder on yourself." Me, "Okay." On January 30th at 11 p.m., Wesley showed up at my apartment completely intoxicated, pounding heavily on the front door. "Give us the money," he screamed through the wood. "Give us the check." Mrs. Kowalski heard the commotion from downstairs and called the police. I recorded the entire thing. For 15 minutes, his shouting echoed through the hallway filled with furious demands. The police finally arrived and filed an official incident report. The responding officer was Officer Dawson, report number 2025-013894. I sent a copy straight to Lisa. On February 3rd, I received a direct message on Instagram from a girl named Sierra M. "You don't know me," the message read. "I dated your brother last year. I need to tell you something. He is not a good person, and neither is your mother." She sent over a series of screenshots containing text conversations from October through December of 2024. Wesley had texted Sierra, "My mom has a plan to get the cash from my sister, the settlement check. We're about to be set." Sierra replied, "That's completely messed up." Wesley texted back, "She can't use the money anyway. She's basically limited now." Sierra added in her message to me, "I broke up with him right after that conversation. It made me sick. I should have told you sooner. I'm so sorry." I forwarded everything to Lisa. "This is clear evidence of a premeditated plan," Lisa said. "Is she willing to testify?" Sierra agreed. She was completely on board. On February 6th, my mom received an official notice from her employer's HR department at the manufacturing company where she worked. They were launching an internal investigation into her conduct. Connor had submitted an anonymous complaint, attaching a secure link to a few selected snippets of the audio recordings. The company's policy stated that any HR employee facing credible allegations of exploitation or abusive behavior, even outside of work, must undergo a formal review. She was immediately placed on administrative suspension. Wesley left me a furious voicemail later that afternoon. "What did you do? Mom got suspended. They're claiming she's abusive. This is entirely your fault." Recording number 16, saved. On February 7th, my phone rang again. It was Aunt Carol. "Jewel," she said softly, "it's Aunt Carol. I need to apologize to you." I stayed silent. "I sat at that dinner table," she continued, her voice trembling. "I heard exactly what your mother said to you. I should have stood up for you, but I didn't. I was a coward." "Why are you calling me now?" I asked. "Because I just found out she filed for a conservatorship. This isn't about protecting you, Jewel. This is about control. If you need someone to stand up in court and recount exactly what happened at that dinner, I will do it. Jim will do it too. We were both there. We heard every single word." "Thank you," I said quietly. "I am so incredibly sorry I didn't speak up that night. Your uncle tried, you know." "I remember," I said. He said, "This doesn't seem right." Your mother glared at him and he backed down. We both did. We failed you. I added them both to our witness list. By February 10th, Wesley was terminated from his position at the gym. The manager cited behavioral and conduct issues as the reason. Someone who followed Sierra on social media also knew the gym management, and word had spread fast. Wesley took to Facebook, posting a bitter public status. "Family is supposed to have your back. Mine completely ruined my life over money. Hope you're happy, Jewel." The comments flooded in. A few people supported him, but several mutual acquaintances commented, "There is definitely a lot more to this story than you're letting on." On February 12th, my mom called me directly for the first time in weeks. Her voice had completely shifted. It was soft, almost sweet, and entirely apologetic. Recording number 17. "Jewel, sweetie, I think we got off on the wrong foot. I was just trying to help you. I'm your mother, and I love you. Can we please just talk about this?" "Talk about what?" "This whole court situation. Let's just drop the petition. You keep your settlement money and we'll figure things out as a family." "Okay," I said. "Okay, so you'll dismiss your attorney?" "No," I replied calmly. "My okay just means I hear what you're saying." There was a sharp pause and then her voice snapped. The mask fell off completely. "You ungrateful child. After everything I've done for you, after everything I've sacrificed, you are going to regret this. You're going to end up completely isolated with nothing, and then you'll realize you should have listened to me." "Maybe," I said. "Goodbye, Mom." I hung up, but she kept calling back, leaving a barrage of furious messages for the next 8 minutes. Every single word was recorded. On February 16th, she posted another public statement on Facebook. "Sometimes you sacrifice absolutely everything for your children, only to be met with complete cruelty in return." After her accident, my daughter was unable to work and wasn't in her right mind. For weeks, I have been trying to protect her from making disastrous financial choices, but instead of gratitude, I am met with lawyers and accusations. My heart is completely broken, praying for families dealing with adult children who turn on the very people trying to help them. Hashtag heartbroken mother, hashtag family first, hashtag God gives his hardest battles to his strongest soldiers. The post gained 43 likes, 28 comments, and 6 shares. Connor archived the entire post before she took it down 2 days later. One comment from an old neighbor read, "Barbara, this doesn't sound like the full story at all." Mom had replied, "You have absolutely no idea what I'm being put through." It was too late. We already had the screenshots. On February 18th, my dad called. "Jewel, can we talk?" "No," I told him, "but you can listen to this." I sent him a secure Dropbox link containing the recording from the Sunday dinner. "What is this?" he asked. "December 15th, I said. "The night you sat there in absolute silence while Mom and Wesley tried to take my settlement money. Listen to it, and then decide if you actually want to call me back." I hung up. 2 hours later, he called again. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message and I could clearly hear him crying. "I listened to it, Jewel. Oh my God, I listened to the whole thing. I am so sorry. I've been a coward. I've always been a coward. I don't even know how to... I am just so incredibly sorry." He had saved the recording. I didn't reply to him. By February 20th, Madison broke up with Wesley. She sent him a long text message, which he forwarded to me in an absolute rage. The text read, "I can't do this anymore. The way your family treated your sister is horrifying. The way you acted is horrifying. We are done." Wesley added his own note to the forward. "See what you did? You completely ruined my relationship too." I left him on read. On February 28th, Lisa and I held our pre-mediation preparation meeting. We had organized our entire case file, 18 audio recordings, Dr. Grant's court evaluation, Dr. Peterson's medical logs regarding the unauthorized data requests, the bank documentation, the police report from Wesley's outburst, Sierra's text screenshots, Mrs. Kowalski's signed statement, and the formal agreements from Carol and Jim to testify. "We are heading into a mandatory mediation session," Lisa explained, "but I don't expect a settlement. Our true objective is to lay our cards on the table and show them exactly what we have. The goal is to force them to withdraw the petition entirely. If they refuse, we go straight to a full court hearing on March 10th. She looked at me closely. "Are you ready for them to hear these recordings? To hear their own words played back to them?" I didn't even blink. "I've been ready since December 15th, I said. March 10th, 2025, 10 a.m. Hennepin County Family Court, Mediation Room 3B. In attendance were myself, Lisa, my mother, her court-appointed attorney Wesley, and the mediation judge Patricia Morrison. We sat across a long conference table equipped with recording devices for the official court record. Mom and Wesley sat on one side, Lisa and I sat on the other. Judge Morrison flipped through the case file. We are here today to determine if there is a demonstrated need for a conservatorship. Ms. Brennan, you represent the respondent. Yes, Your Honor, Lisa stated clearly. And we have extensive evidence demonstrating that this petition is entirely groundless and motivated strictly by financial exploitation. Judge Morrison looked over at my mom's attorney. I have thoroughly reviewed Dr. Grant's independent evaluation. It shows absolutely no basis for a conservatorship. Is the petitioner prepared to withdraw the request? The attorney glanced at my mom. No, Your Honor. We are moving forward with the petition. Your Honor, Lisa interrupted smoothly, may I present our initial evidence? Proceed, the judge nodded. Lisa opened her laptop and connected it to the room's audio system. This is a brief audio excerpt from December 15, 2024, recorded during a family dinner at the Brandt household. The respondent, Jewel Brandt, legally captured this conversation under Minnesota's single-party consent statutes. She played a 12-minute compiled clip highlighting the most critical moments. Mom's voice echoed through the speaker. You're limited now. Wesley has a future. Wesley's voice followed. You're going to be restricted from now on. Mom's voice snapped again. Don't be selfish. And then, the definitive line played, You're limited now, Jewel. What are you realistically going to do with $48,000? When the audio cut out, the room fell into a dead, heavy silence. Judge Morrison looked directly at my mother. Is that your voice, Ms. Brandt? Mom's face drained of color. We were just having a private family discussion. This is completely out of context. Out of context? The judge questioned. Ms. Brennan, do you have additional material? We have 17 more recordings, Your Honor, but I will only play 3 more for the purpose of this session. Lisa clicked the next file, playing the recording from the dress rehearsal on December 10th, where my mom was coaching Wesley. Don't say taking her money. Say for the good of the family. Don't say she's limited. Say her recovery doesn't require this much. Make it sound practical, even caring. And if she cries, crying just means she's giving in. My mom's attorney shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Judge Morrison frowned. This was recorded 4 days prior to the dinner? Yes, Your Honor, Lisa stated. It demonstrates clear premeditation. Finally, Lisa played the phone call from February 12th, the moment the mask slipped entirely. My mom's voice shrilled through the room. You ungrateful child. After everything I've done for you, you're going to end up completely isolated with nothing. When the recording ended, there was a full 15 seconds of dead silence in the room. Judge Morrison looked directly at my mother. Ms. Brandt, this phone call took place exactly 3 weeks ago, right around the time you petitioned this court claiming you were trying to protect your daughter out of love, and because she supposedly needed your guidance. My mother didn't say a single word. We are going to take a 15-minute recess, the judge announced. When I return, we will discuss our next steps. Ms. Brandt, I strongly advise you to utilize this time to speak with your attorney. With that, she stepped out of the room. Lisa and I walked out into the hallway. She asked me how I was holding up, and I told her I was doing fine. That was when I noticed my dad. He had been waiting outside the courtroom the entire time. He walked over to me, tears streaming down his face. Jewel! Not right now, Dad, I said. I heard it, he whispered, pointing toward the heavy wooden doors. I heard her voice. I heard the awful things she said to you. I know, I replied. 15 minutes later, we walked back into the mediation room. My mom's attorney stood up immediately. Your Honor, after consulting with my client, we have decided to formally withdraw the petition for temporary conservatorship. The withdrawal is noted, Judge Morrison said. However, I am not finished. Ms. Brennan, you brought forward substantial evidence of attempted financial exploitation. I am officially referring this matter to Adult Protective Services for a thorough investigation. She then turned her gaze to my mother. Furthermore, I have closely reviewed your sworn affidavit, Ms. Brandt. You documented 4 specific incidents claiming cognitive impairment. Ms. Brennan has provided ironclad evidence debunking every single one of those claims. Under Minnesota law, filing a false affidavit under oath constitutes perjury. I am referring this matter to the Hennepin County Attorney's Office for formal review. Lisa had submitted our counter evidence seamlessly. The electronic sign-in sheet from my physical therapy clinic on December 20th, my time-stamped medication logs from December 28th, the medical restrictions proving I wasn't even cleared to drive on January 3rd, and the audio recording from January 10th proving my memory was entirely intact. Judge Morrison looked at my mother coldly. You fabricated evidence to support your petition. I must have gotten the dates mixed up, my mother stammered, her voice shaking. You managed to mix up 4 entirely different dates, each with highly specific fabricated details? The judge countered. My mom's attorney stood up again, looking entirely defeated. Your Honor, may I have another brief moment alone with my client? You have exactly 5 minutes, Judge Morrison stated. But understand this. If Ms. Brandt requests a restraining order, I am prepared to sign it immediately. Jewel, do you wish to file for a protective order today? I looked at my mother, then at Wesley, and finally back at the judge. Not today, Your Honor, I said clearly. But I wanted officially on the record that if either of them attempts to contact me ever again, I will file for it instantly. Judge Morrison nodded. So ordered. This hearing is adjourned. The petition is dismissed and the investigative referrals stand. She looked at me one last time before leaving the bench. You are only 23 years old. You survived a terrible accident, underwent major surgery, endured months of painful physical therapy, and faced a painful betrayal by the people who were supposed to care for you, yet you documented everything. That took remarkable courage and an incredibly clear mind. Good luck to you, Jewel. Thank you, Your Honor, I said. When we walked out into the main lobby, Aunt Carol and Uncle Jim were waiting for me. They had shown up ready to stand by me and testify if it came down to it. When my mother saw them, her face turned entirely pale. Carol walked up and hugged me. We are all on your side, she said softly. I thanked her. My dad was still there too. He waited patiently until my mother and Wesley finally left the building before he approached me. Can we talk now, Jewel? He asked. What is there left to say, Dad? I'm leaving her, he said, his voice cracking. I filed the separation papers this morning. I should have done this years and years ago. I should have protected you from her, but I didn't. I was a coward. Yes, I looked him in the eye. You were. He flinches slightly at my words. But you're standing here now, I continued, and I guess that's a start. If you want to rebuild any kind of relationship with me, you're going to have to earn it. That means you go to therapy. Not couples counseling, just you by yourself. And it means you never ever defend her actions to me again. Can you do that? I'll try, he whispered. Trying isn't going to cut it, Dad. Call me after you've consistently gone to therapy for a full month. We'll see where things stand then. If you've ever found yourself wishing you had hard proof of the hurtful things people said to you behind closed doors, take a moment to type the word record in the comments section below. On March 15th at 2:17 a.m., my phone lit up. It was a long text message from my dad. I listened to all of it, Jewel. Lisa sent me the secure link to the files. I listened to every single recording. I sat there and heard myself staying completely silent at the dinner table while your mother was tearing you down. I heard how my silence made me an accomplice to what they were doing. I didn't realize I had become that kind of person, and I don't want to be that person anymore. I am so incredibly sorry. I am so damn sorry, Jewel. You deserved better from me your entire life. I completely failed you, and I was a coward. But I am finally leaving. I filed the papers, and I'm moving my things out tomorrow morning. I don't know if this means anything to you now, but I needed you to know. I read the text at 6:30 a.m. I read it 3 separate times. Then I went to my physical therapy session, thinking about it all day long. On March 18th, I finally texted him back. My response was just a single word. Okay. An hour later, I sent another message. Go to therapy, Dad. Real therapy. Call me when you've stuck with it for 3 months. He replied immediately, I will, I promise. I didn't write back. On March 20th, he sent me a photo. It was a picture of a moving truck packed with his personal belongings, pulling away from the house. The caption read, This is my proof of leaving. This is my proof of choosing you, even if it's 23 years too late. I'm staying at my brother's house for now. I start my first therapy session next week. I found a specialist who deals with family dysfunction and enabling behavior. I am going to do things right this time. I saved the photo. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. On March 30th, during my physical therapy session, I took 8 full steps completely independent of my crutches. It was the first time since the accident. My physical therapist, Ryan Harper, looked at me with a huge smile and said, You did it, Jewel. I burst into tears right there. It wasn't from the pain, it was just the sheer weight of everything hitting me at once. Yeah, I choked out, I did. By the time April arrived, my settlement funds were finally deposited safely into a brand new bank account under my sole name. I used that money to lease a beautiful one-bedroom apartment in St. Paul, just a 15-minute drive from Minneapolis, and incredibly close to my therapy clinic. It was located at 712 Selby Avenue on the second floor, featuring gorgeous hardwood floors and massive windows. It cost $1,100 a month. The leasing agent looked at my application and smiled. "You're the youngest tenant I've signed recently. Most people your age look for roommates to split the costs. I need a space that is entirely my own," I told her. "I just need some quiet." On my very first night in the apartment, I sat down right on the living room floor. I didn't have any furniture yet. It was just me, surrounded by absolute stillness. There were no heavy footsteps pacing above me, no angry voices shouting through the walls. Just peace. I started crying, but for the first time it was tears of pure relief, not sadness. On April 8th, Lisa sent a formal certified letter to my mother and Wesley through their legal counsel. It was an official notice stating that Jewel M. Brandt does not consent to any form of contact from Barbara Brandt or Wesley Brandt. Any attempt to reach out, whether by phone call, email, text message, social media, a third-party messenger, or an in-person approach, would result in an immediate application for a formal restraining order. The letter explicitly stated that all audio recordings and collected evidence would be filed directly with the court, and any violation of this boundary would result in the immediate public release of all the audio files. The notice required 3 signatures to be legally binding: my mom's, Wesley's, and their lawyers. All 3 of them signed the document on April 12th. There was no argument, no pushback, just absolute silence. On April 15th, I got a new phone number and established a completely fresh contact list. It contained exactly 7 people: Lisa, Connor, Dr. Peterson, Ryan, Mrs. Kowalski, my therapy clinic, and my dad. I cut down my inner circle from 47 people to just those 7 key connections. I deleted my old social media accounts, registered a new email address, and started fresh. The old phone sat turned off in a desk drawer, perfectly preserved as evidence, but completely silent. As April turned into May, I kept expecting my mother or Wesley to cross the line and try something, but they never did. The silence was absolute. Lisa reassured me during our follow-up call. "They are terrified, Jewel. They know that you hold all the power now. Keeping their distance is the only option they have left." By May 1st, I realized something incredible. I had gone an entire 24 hours without thinking about them even once. Later that month, I enrolled in an intensive weekend certification program to become an adaptive fitness trainer, focusing on helping individuals with physical limitations rebuild their strength and mobility. During the introduction, the instructor asked what motivated me to pursue this path. "Because I know exactly what it feels like when your body betrays you," I stated openly. "And I know what it feels like when your family does the exact same thing. I want to help people rebuild both their physical strength and their independent lives at the same time." My very first client was a woman recovering from a severe spinal injury. Her family was constantly pressuring her to just accept her physical restrictions and sign over her insurance payout to them. I listened to her story, reached into my bag, and handed her Lisa's professional card. "Do you want to know how to protect yourself?" I asked her. Toward the end of May, Ryan asked me out for coffee. Not as my physical therapist, but simply as himself. "I know this might feel a little unconventional since I used to manage your physical therapy," he said gently, "but you've officially graduated from the clinic now. If you're open to it, I'd really love to take you out for dinner sometime." "I honestly don't know if I'm fully ready for a formal date yet," I admitted. "Hey, absolutely no pressure at all," he replied with a warm smile. "We can just grab a casual coffee, get dinner, or do nothing at all. Whatever you feel comfortable with." "Let's go with coffee," I smiled. "Let's start there." 3 hours later, we were still sitting at the table talking and laughing. It was a genuine, light-hearted laugh, and it felt absolutely wonderful. By June, I launched my own independent podcast titled Quiet Boundaries. It focused heavily on navigating financial exploitation, handling family betrayal, and utilizing hard evidence to protect yourself. For the very first episode, I sat in front of the microphone and kept it entirely real. "My name is Jewel. I'm 23 years old. 6 months ago, my mother attempted to divert my accident settlement funds right at a family dinner table. I recorded every single second of it. This is everything I've learned about reclaiming your power, utilizing silence, and setting unshakable boundaries." I uploaded the episode and went to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, the show had already reached 10,000 downloads. The comment section immediately began filling up with incredibly moving responses. One person wrote, "I am literally setting up a recording app for my family right now. Thank you for this." Another said, "I genuinely thought I was the only person going through this exact situation." By the middle of June, the channel had grown to over 50,000 subscribers. On June 20th, it marks exactly 3 months to the day since I told my dad to give it 3 months. My phone buzzed with a text from him. "I have officially completed 12 consecutive weeks of intensive therapy. Can we please get a cup of coffee together?" I wrote back, 1 hour in a highly public place, and I'll be bringing someone with me. I brought Ryan along for support. When we sat down, my dad immediately handed over his official therapy intake documentation and his attendance logs. He brought them along simply to prove to me that he wasn't lying about his progress. "I'm finally learning what enabling really means," he said openly, his voice steady but emotional. "I'm learning about cowardice and understanding exactly why staying silent makes you an accomplice to the harm. I'm not sitting here asking you to instantly forgive me, Jewel. I just want you to see that I am putting in the actual work to change." "Good," I told him calmly. "Keep going with it. If you stick with your therapy program, we can arrange to meet up like this once a month." "I will," he promised. As we stood up to leave the coffee shop, he looked at me and asked, "Is there anything at all I can do to help you out right now?" "Yes," I looked back at him. "Just stay in therapy. That is how you help. If this story connects with you or reminds you of your own strength, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below." If you had been in my shoes, what would you have recorded? It is now July of 2025. It has been exactly 8 months since that fateful night on Hennepin Avenue. I am officially walking entirely without the assistance of crutches. Some days my leg still develops a dull ache, but most days it feels perfectly fine. I have my own independent apartment, my professional trainer certification, and 12 regular clients. My podcast has crossed over 50,000 subscribers, and Ryan and I are officially engaged. We are taking things slow, but we are walking forward side by side. As for my mother and my brother, I haven't spoken a single word to my mother in over 5 months, and the same goes for Wesley. I have absolutely no idea where they are living, and I have zero desire to look them up. The formal restraining order was never officially filed because they completely vanished from my life and never attempted to contact me again. The absolute silence is more than enough for me. My father and I meet up for coffee once a month, marking our 6th meeting recently. We aren't incredibly close, and honestly maybe we never will be completely close again. But he is putting in a genuine effort, and that is a massive improvement compared to the silence of the past. Adult Protective Services officially closed out their investigation back in April, concluding that there was insufficient evidence to pursue criminal charges in a court of law. However, the entire investigation remains permanently on their record. If they ever attempt to manipulate or exploit another individual in the future, that file will be opened right back up. The county attorney's office also reviewed the perjury referral and ultimately declined to file formal criminal charges, citing it as an internal family matter that was resolved when the petition was withdrawn before any actual financial loss occurred. But that too leaves a permanent paper trail. If she ever tries to pull a stunt like this again, it will surface instantly. People frequently ask me if I regret secretly recording my family, if it was truly worth the fallout, or if I carry any lingering guilt over how things turned out. I don't, not for a single second. My mother always tried to tell me that family is naturally supposed to protect you, but when my own family refused to stand up for me, technology taught me exactly how to protect myself. In the modern world, the most powerful weapon you possess isn't screaming or shouting. It's simply pressing the record button. It's choosing to stay silent and letting their own words hold them accountable. At that Sunday dinner table, I didn't even blink, and standing here today, I still won't. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is keep quiet and let the tape do all the talking. My name is Jewel Brandt. This is my story, and every single word of it is completely true because I have the receipts. They had absolutely no clue the phone was recording. That was their first mistake. And my name is Amy Lowe. I'm 28 years old. On Thanksgiving Day in 2025, I walked into my parents' estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, wearing the exact same steel-toed work boots I'd been wearing all day long. They were heavily caked in dried concrete dust. The exact second I stepped across the threshold, my mother's eyes dropped straight to the floor. "Amy," she said, her voice incredibly tight, "could you not have managed to put on something decent before coming over?" I looked down. My boots were already leaving distinct gray outlines on her $800 Persian rug. Instantly, the chatter from 17 relatives in the room went dead silent. My father set his wine glass down on the table with a heavy clink, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This right here," he said, pointing a finger directly at me. "This is exactly why we can't have nice things in this family. Manual labor is an embarrassment to this household." My brother, Justin, sat on the couch with a smug smirk on his face. My mother snatched a linen napkin and began scrubbing the marble countertop right where my hand had rested a moment before, acting as if I were carrying some kind of disease. That was when my 82-year-old grandfather, sitting right at the head of the long dining table, slowly pushed his chair back. He stood up, looked my father dead in the eye, and said with absolute calmness, "Do you want me to tell everyone here what your actual name used to be, James?" They had absolutely no idea what those boots had actually built. They didn't know that those very boots had walked across commercial construction projects worth more than their entire estate combined. And they certainly didn't know that in exactly 11 days, I would be standing on a stage in front of 300 people, including every single person in that room, while my grandfather brought to light the exact truth they had spent an entire lifetime trying to bury. But before I tell you what happened on that stage and uncover the secret I kept hidden for years, take a brief moment. If this story is striking a chord with you already, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. Let me know where you're watching from today, and tell me if you've ever been made to feel ashamed of the hard work you do. I read through every single comment, so let's dive into the rest of this story together. Let me take you back to the beginning, because this story didn't actually start at that Thanksgiving dinner table. It started years ago in a town where your professional title dictated exactly who you were allowed to be. I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut. If you aren't familiar with Greenwich, here is what you need to know. It is consistently ranked as one of the wealthiest towns in the entire country. The median household income is well over $180,000. It is a place filled with old money families, hedge fund executives, corporate attorneys, and prominent doctors. People here measure your worth by the university decals on your car window and the titles printed on your business card. My family relocated here back in 1998 when I was just a year old. My father, James Lowe, had just launched his private financial consulting firm. My mother, Lauren, stayed at home to raise me and my brother, Justin, who was born 2 years later. We lived in a stunning 4-bedroom colonial home in the Riverside neighborhood, the kind of place with intricate crown molding, a sweeping circular driveway, and professional landscaping services, because mowing your own lawn was considered entirely below our social standing. My father made absolutely sure that everyone knew we had arrived. He joined the local country club, drove a sleek black BMW, and loved to boast at cocktail parties about his firm managing high net worth portfolios. But he was also incredibly meticulously careful to hide one specific aspect of his life. He never let anyone know where he actually came from. Because, as I found out much later down the road, my father's last name hadn't always been Lowe. His birth name was actually Linsky. My grandfather, Samuel Linsky, had physically built half of Greenwich with his own 2 hands. He spent 50 years working as a master mason, layering brick, stone, mortar, and completing complex historical restoration work, the kind of craftsmanship built to endure for centuries. Back in 1975, he started his own independent business, Linsky & Son Masonry. He managed a crew of 6 to 12 workers, routinely putting in 60-hour work weeks. He would come home completely covered in white mortar dust, and my father absolutely hated every single second of it. It wasn't that my dad lacked the skill. He was actually incredibly talented at the trade. We still have old photographs of him at 16 years old, standing high up on a scaffolding rig right next to my grandfather, holding a trowel with cement stains splattered across his jeans. In those photos, he looked genuinely proud and strong. But somewhere along the line, something shifted inside him, convincing him that working with your hands made you fundamentally inferior to polite society. In 1995, at 25 years old, right after earning his business degree from Central Connecticut State University, my father legally changed his name. He filed the paperwork in April, turning Linsky into Lowe. It sounded cleaner, simpler, more Anglo-Saxon, and significantly more professional in his eyes. The reason listed on the official legal document was simply career advancement. My grandfather didn't speak a single word to him for 6 straight months. But there was another part of his history that my family completely buried along with the family name. My father spent 6 full years working as a commercial truck driver to pay his way through college. It wasn't just a brief summer gig, it was a grueling 6-year stretch. From 1989 to 1995, he drove long-haul commercial delivery routes for Cisco Foods, navigating heavy rigs through Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, and Massachusetts. He averaged 65 hours a week behind the wheel, starting out making $12 an hour and eventually working his way up to $18. Every single cent that funded his business degree was earned through the grip of his hands on a steering wheel and the strength of his back on loading docks. The moment he finally graduated, landed his first corporate office job, and received his new business cards, he completely rewrote his personal history. He told my mother he used to work in corporate logistics, which was technically true on paper. He told his new colleagues he came from a small business background, which also wasn't a total lie, but he never, under any circumstances, mentioned commercial trucks, mixing cement, or the hardworking man who taught him the value of actual labor. By the time I was born in 1997, James Lowe had successfully established himself as a self-made corporate professional. The Lenski chapter was completely wiped clean. In 2003, my grandfather sold his masonry business for a modest $180,000. It wasn't a massive fortune, just barely enough to secure a simple retirement. My father was visibly embarrassed by how small the figure was. Growing up, I was completely oblivious to all of this hidden drama. I just knew that my grandfather was a bit different from everyone else. He was much quieter. His hands were heavily scarred and covered in thick calluses. He always showed up to family dinners wearing flannel shirts and rugged work boots, and my mother would purposefully seat him at the very far end of the dining table, safely away from any high-profile guests she was trying to impress. And I absolutely adored him. During the summer of 2009, when I was 12 years old, I spent 3 months working directly alongside him. He was managing a small residential project down in Norwalk, completely rebuilding a stone patio for a family named the Richards. I became his official assistant. I mixed the mortar, carried the bricks, and learned exactly how to read a level, why a plumb line is critical, and how to properly clean a trowel so it lasts for 40 years. My grandfather was incredibly patient and structured. He treated me like a genuine apprentice rather than just a kid passing time. He paid me $8 an hour, and I saved every single cent, accumulating $600 by the end of the summer. On the final day of the project, he let me personally lay down a row of 15 bricks. He guided my hands through every step, checking the alignment string and tapping the bricks perfectly level. Those 15 bricks are still standing there today. Sometimes I purposefully drive past the property just to look at them. That summer, my grandfather told me something that stayed with me forever. We were sitting on the tailgate of his pickup truck eating deli sandwiches, our hands stained with gray dust. He looked over at our completed stone patio and said, "Amy, look at this. The person who builds something like this might not get their name in a history book, but their work stands the test of time. That is what a real legacy looks like. That is what your own 2 hands are capable of creating." I was only 12, so I didn't fully comprehend the depth of what he meant back then, but the words stuck with me. Later that afternoon, he snapped a photo of me covered in dust, holding a trowel with a massive smile on my face. When my father saw the picture, his immediate reaction was sharp. "Don't you dare show that photo to anyone." By the time I turned 16, the family roles were set in stone. Justin was the golden child. He played varsity lacrosse, maintained perfect grades, and went on to attend Dartmouth College. After that, he completed his MBA at the NYU Stern School of Business and landed a highly coveted role as an investment banking associate at a boutique firm in New York City. His starting salary was $180,000, with a guaranteed $35,000 signing bonus. My parents completely covered the $75,000 cost of his MBA, proudly calling it an investment in his future. I, on the other hand, was the family disappointment. I spent 2 semesters drifting through courses at Norwalk Community College. I tried studying fashion design simply because I didn't know what else to do with my life. I absolutely hated it and officially dropped out in 2016. My parents were completely mortified. My father lost count of how many times he sat me down to ask when I was finally going to get my life together. I eventually found a temporary job working traffic control for a local utility crew, standing out on active road construction sites holding a stop sign. It paid $22 an hour. I stood out in the blazing sun for 8 hours a day, wearing a high-visibility vest and heavy steel-toed boots, listening to frustrated drivers honk their horns at me. My family assumed that was the absolute ceiling for my life, but what they didn't realize was that I genuinely loved being on those construction sites. I found myself fascinated watching the crews work. I loved the precision, the applied physics, and the way a project that looked like absolute chaos from the outside was actually a highly orchestrated sequence of timed operations. I started asking the crew leads endless questions. How do you properly grade a roadbed? How do you pour a solid foundation when it's raining? What is the load-bearing capacity for that specific support beam? The site supervisors started giving me real technical answers. One of them, a 28-year-old civil engineer named Connor, told me directly that I needed to look into trade school. He told me I had an innate knack for the work and that the industry was desperate for people who could both think analytically and build physically. So, in 2018, I enrolled in the Connecticut Technical Academy. It was a rigorous 2-year program covering advanced masonry certification and construction project management. I worked my traffic control shifts by day and attended classes at night, paying for every single credit hour entirely out of my own pocket. When I graduated, my total student loan balance was exactly 0. My family never bothered to ask what I was studying. They just assumed I was still wandering aimlessly. In 2019, I sat for my formal general contractor licensing exam. I put in over 400 hours of intense studying for a test that carries a low 52% pass rate. I passed with a score of 91%. On June 12, 2020, at 23 years old, I officially became a fully licensed commercial general contractor in the state of Connecticut, license number MC-0392156. I was the youngest individual in the state to clear the licensing requirements that year, and I was the only woman. I chose not to tell my family. It wasn't out of shame. I simply wanted to build something substantial first. I wanted the proof to speak for itself. On March 12, 2021, I officially filed the legal paperwork to establish Cornerstone Infrastructure LLC, based out of Stamford, Connecticut. Listed as the sole owner and chief operator, Amy Lowe. My very first independent contract was an $85,000 local municipal repair project in Norwalk. The city manager decided to take a chance on my bid because I had worked with his field crews before, and he knew firsthand that I always showed up on time and delivered clean work. I wrapped up the entire project 3 weeks ahead of schedule and came in $4,000 under budget. Word-of-mouth recommendations spread incredibly fast through the local network. By the end of 2021, I had a permanent crew of 6 workers. By the close of 2022, that number grew to 15. By the end of 2023, I was managing 28 full-time employees. By the time 2024 wrapped up, my company generated $8.3 million in gross annual revenue. And through all of it, my family still fully believed I was standing on asphalt, holding a sign for $22 an hour, simply because I never bothered to correct their assumptions. Whenever they asked about my employment, which was rare, I would just say construction. They immediately translated that to mean manual labor, and I didn't see a reason to explain further. At family gatherings, whenever they made remarks about me working with my hands or suggested I consider going back to school, I would just nod politely and change the subject. It was far easier than trying to explain the reality. Or, if I'm being entirely honest, maybe I was just biding my time, waiting for the perfect moment when the evidence of my success would be so undeniable that they couldn't possibly try to minimize it. That exact moment presented itself in October of 2025. The historic Fairfield County Courthouse was originally constructed back in 1876. It was a stunning architectural landmark featuring intricate structural stonework and towering arched windows, the kind of building that makes you appreciate true craftsmanship. But by 2024, the historic facade was literally crumbling apart. The county issued an official request for proposals for a massive project: a complete exterior structural restoration, extensive masonry repair, historical window replacement, full electrical and plumbing modernization, and comprehensive accessibility upgrades, all while adhering strictly to historical preservation standards. It was the largest public works contract introduced in Fairfield County in over 2 decades. The estimated budget was $12.5 million. 9 major contracting firms submitted formal bids for the project. 2 were massive corporate operations based out of Boston, 3 came down from Hartford, and 4 were local county operations. My firm, Cornerstone Infrastructure, was one of those local 4. I spent 3 solid weeks putting that proposal together. It was an 87-page document detailing precise project timelines, extensive resumes of my engineering team, our flawless safety records, insurance caps, bonding capacities, glowing references from 8 previously completed commercial projects, and step-by-step photos of my own structural work. On October 15, 2025, I sat inside the Fairfield Municipal Building across a conference table from Town First Selectman Richard Aldrich and 2 county commissioners. My corporate counsel, Victoria Hayes, sat right next to me. Victoria was 38, a graduate of Stanford Law, and had handled my corporate filings since 2021. She was one of the very few people who actually knew what I had been quietly building. Richard Aldrich looked across the table at me, shifting through my thick proposal. "Ms. Lowe, I'll be completely honest with you. When I initially saw your age on the filing documents, I was highly skeptical. But then I reviewed your firm's commercial portfolio, and I noticed that your grandfather is listed as Samuel Lansky." I paused for a second. "You know my grandfather?" "He personally completed the structural brickwork on the old civic library back in 1991, Richard said with a nod. "To this day, that structure is completely flawless. Not a single structural crack in the foundation. That legacy tells me absolutely everything I need to know about the quality of your operation." We executed the contract that very afternoon, a $12.5 million commercial project with an 18-month timeline. My name would be stamped across every public permit, and my contractor license number would be filed on every state document. As we walked out of the Civic Center, Victoria caught my arm with a smile. "Amy, do you realize what this means? Your name is going to be everywhere now. Public state filings, municipal permits, local press releases. You can't keep this under wraps anymore." I looked at her. "I'm not keeping anything under wraps, Victoria. I just haven't gone out of my way to announce it to them." She shook her head. "You are 28 years old, and you just secured the largest infrastructure contract in the county. You need to own that success." "I will," I said quietly, "when the timing is right." The formal press release went out 5 days later. Both the Fairfield Citizen and the Connecticut Post ran small business features on the contract. My name was featured prominently in both articles. Amy Lowe, owner and chief contractor of Cornerstone Infrastructure, LLC. My father's financial consulting firm frequently provided material auditing for local Connecticut contractors. He regularly reviewed industry newsletters and regional building permits as part of his daily work, but he missed my name entirely. Or perhaps more accurately, if he did see it, he simply chose to believe it was a completely different person. Let me tell you about what those family dinners were actually like, because that Thanksgiving explosion wasn't the first time my family made it painfully clear where I stood in their eyes. During Christmas of 2023, my parents hosted 22 family members at their estate. My mother set up 2 distinct dining areas, the main formal table for the adults, and a small folding table tucked away in the corner of the room for the kids, my young cousins who ranged from 8 to 12 years old. My mother looked over at me as guests began to arrive. "Amy, sweetie, I think you might actually feel much more comfortable sitting over at the children's table tonight. You know, since you came straight from the field and you're looking a bit, well, you know." She gestured vaguely toward my hands. My hands were perfectly clean, thoroughly washed, and my nails were neatly trimmed, but they were permanently calloused from working on active sites. I didn't bother to argue. I quietly took a seat at the folding table, sandwiched directly between an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. They spent the entire dinner talking excitedly about video games while I just nodded along. When my 8-year-old cousin, Ethan, looked up and asked, "Why are you sitting at the kid table? You're a grown-up." I couldn't even find the words to explain it to him. I finished my dessert as quickly as possible and drove home in tears by 8:45 p.m. Then came Easter of 2024. Justin brought along his new girlfriend, Stephanie, a corporate attorney at a prominent firm making $220,000 a year. When Justin introduced me to her, he did it with a patronizing chuckle. "This is Amy, my older sister. She's the one who works with her hands, you know, manual labor stuff." Stephanie offered me a polite, pitying smile. A few minutes later, I walked into the kitchen to grab a drink and overheard Justin talking to her just 6 feet away near the pantry. He whispered, "Yeah, Amy's always been the black sheep of the family. She does construction or road repairs, I think. She's super sensitive about it, so she doesn't really talk about her work. Honestly, I think she carries a lot of insecurity about not tracking into a real career. I was standing right there. I left the house early that day, too. In July of 2024, my Aunt Diane hosted a massive summer family reunion at her waterfront home in Westport, with 40 relatives in attendance. My father began organizing everyone for a large group photograph. He gathered all the family members together, calling out the names of all the children who had achieved professional success. Justin, along with 4 cousins who were corporate lawyers, residents at hospitals, or working in prominent architectural firms. He completely skipped over my name. I stood about 10 feet away by the dessert table, watching the entire scene unfold. My father made brief eye contact with me, then quickly looked away to adjust the camera. That photograph was uploaded to the extended family Facebook group later that evening with the caption, "So incredibly proud of this family of high achievers." The post gathered 47 likes. I wasn't tagged in the photo. While people were clearing out, my Aunt Diane, who is my grandfather's daughter, walked up to me, placed a comforting hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Your father is an absolute fool, Amy. Samuel told me exactly what you've been building out there. I am so incredibly proud of you." "Thank you, Aunt Diane," I said, my voice catching in my throat as I tried not to cry. That same evening at 9 p.m., my grandfather called my cell phone. He said, "I saw that family photo online. Notice how I wasn't standing in it either? Want to know why? Because I was way too busy being proud of what you're accomplishing to waste my time posing for his nonsense." I let out a laugh, and then the tears just started falling. By September of 2024, my father hosted a large corporate networking mixer at his home, with 32 prominent business colleagues and prospective clients in attendance. I stopped by briefly, mistakenly thinking it was just a casual family gathering. The moment I walked through the door and realized it was a formal professional event, I immediately turned around to leave. But my father spotted me across the foyer. He walked over and introduced me to one of his biggest prospective clients, a commercial real estate developer named Doug Parsons. "Doug, I'd like you to meet my son Justin, who is an associate in investment banking and doing remarkably well for himself. And, he paused, looking at me with a strained expression. "This is Amy. She's currently taking some time to figure out exactly what she wants to do with her life." I stood there in my clean jeans and a nice blouse, shook Doug's hand, smiled, and walked away. I had only stayed for 12 minutes, and once again I drove home in tears. 3 weeks later, I won that $12.5 million contract. Doug Parsons was one of the members on the selection committee, and he had cast his vote for me. He had absolutely no clue I was James Lowe's daughter, simply because my father never told a soul I even existed. October 19th, 2024. Just 4 days after I secured the Fairfield contract, it was my mother's 58th birthday. We had dinner at an upscale restaurant in Stamford called the Capitol Grill, ironically just 15 minutes away from my office. The bitter contrast of the situation wasn't lost on me. There were 6 of us at the table: my parents, Justin, his girlfriend Stephanie, and me. Right in the middle of appetizers, my mother started talking about me as if I weren't sitting a mere 4 feet away. "I just worry about her, you know," she said to my father. "She's 28, no real career, no boyfriend, just spending her days working outside. What kind of a life is that?" Justin chimed in right on cue. "Maybe we should stage an intervention or something. Get her to see a career counselor." My father just sighed. "She's stubborn, takes right after her grandfather." My grandfather wasn't there that evening. He was too exhausted to make the trip. I just sat there poking at the salad on my plate without uttering a single word. Stephanie looked visibly uncomfortable. To her credit, she tried to shift the conversation, but the damage was already done. When dessert arrived, my absolute favorite, a rich chocolate cake, my mother slid a slice over to me. "At least have some cake, dear. You look so thin. Are you even eating enough?" I declined, using the excuse that I needed to step away to the restroom. I sat in a closed stall, staring down at the tile floor for 6 straight minutes, just trying to compose myself. When I finally walked back out to the table, I said, "I have an early site inspection first thing tomorrow morning, so I need to head out." It was only 8:45 p.m. Family dinners usually never wrapped up before 9:30. I left $60 in cash on the table to cover my share of the meal and walked out before the final bill even arrived. While I was back in that restaurant restroom, I had stared at my reflection in the mirror. I thought about the physical contract locked inside my office safe, the active permit stamped with my name, and that $12.5 million. I told myself, just hold on for one more month, then they'll see, and I'll never have to sit through a dinner like this again. A week after Thanksgiving, an invitation arrived in the mail. It was for Justin's wedding, set for June 14, 2026, at the Plaza Hotel in New York City. They were expecting 300 guests, with a projected budget between $80,000 and $100,000. My designated role, a bridesmaid, purely out of family obligation. But right on the card, Stephanie had written a brief handwritten note. Amy, no +1, work schedule unpredictable. Every other guest was given a +1. Even my cousin Emily's boyfriend of a mere 3 months was officially invited. But I wasn't allowed a guest because my work schedule was unpredictable. I actually had a boyfriend named Connor. He was the exact same site supervisor from 2018 who had encouraged me to look into trade school. We had been seriously dating for 8 months, but I had never introduced him to my family because I knew exactly how they would judge him. He works in construction, wears rugged work boots, and drives a pickup truck. He was the exact definition of the kind of person they looked down on. When I told Connor about the wedding invitation constraint, he didn't hesitate. Forget them. You don't need their permission to bring me. I placed the invitation on my desk, resting right next to the formal program for the December 8th awards gala. 2 major events, each representing 2 entirely different versions of my life. One where I was completely invisible, and one where I was being celebrated. I had to decide which version was my actual reality. On December 3rd, 2025, just 5 days before the gala, I drove down to my grandfather's home in Norwalk. It's a modest 3-bedroom Cape Cod-style house that he bought back in 1978. Ever since my grandmother Martha passed away in 2019, he hadn't really touched the attic. The 2 of us spent the afternoon clearing through old storage boxes, and that's exactly when I uncovered it. It was an old Budweiser cardboard box with black marker scribbled across the side, reading, Linsky Masonry, 1975 to 2003. Inside were 47 vintage photographs, and 12 of them had Linsky & Son Masonry proudly stamped across the top border. My grandfather sat right there on the attic floor next to me, picking up a photo from 1984. It featured my father at 16, standing proudly on a scaffolding rig in cement-stained jeans, holding a trowel with his arm draped over my grandfather's shoulder. Both of them were laughing. My grandfather's voice started to tremble as he looked at it. This was your father before he forgot who he was, before he buried his own family name. He was incredible, Amy, truly magnificent, strong, proud. And then something shifted. College happened. Or maybe the world convinced him that who he was wasn't enough. I don't know, but he used to look at me the exact way you look at me right now. He paused to wipe his eyes. I miss that boy. At the very bottom of the box, I discovered 2 legal documents. The first was a birth certificate, James Michael Linsky, born March 3, 1970. The second was a formal court filing, a petition for change of name, submitted on April 15, 1995, and officially granted on May 2, 1995. The listed reason, professional name preference. I looked up at my grandfather, who was quietly weeping. He walked closer to me, recalling the memory. He looked at me and said, Dad, you have to understand. No one is going to hire a Linsky. It just sounds too blue-collar. I told him, son, that name is exactly what made you. But he just looked back and said, Dad, that name is going to bury me. My grandfather's voice broke completely and he had to step out of the room. I found one more item resting inside that box. It was a single-page, handwritten letter in faded blue ink, dated September 12, 2010. It was addressed directly to my father, but the envelope had never been stamped or mailed out. The letter read, James, I am incredibly proud of everything you've achieved. Your firm, your estate, your success. But never forget where you started. Those hands you try so hard to hide didn't just build commercial structures. They built you. And now, Amy has those exact same hands. Don't you ever make her feel ashamed of them the way you were ashamed of your own. Love, Dad. I held that letter in my hand. It had been sitting in darkness for 15 years, written right when I was 12 years old. My grandfather walked back in, looking at the paper. I held back, he whispered. I thought sending it would just make the rift wider. Maybe if I had actually mailed it, things would be different today. I carefully folded the letter and placed it securely into my wallet. I'll carry it for you, Grandpa, I said. December 7th, 2025. The evening right before the awards gala. I wrapped up my work at 6 p.m. and started the drive home. My route took me directly past the street where my parents live. I slowed my truck down, looking over at the house. The lights were all on, the family was inside, just a typical Sunday evening. I didn't stop, I just kept driving. A sudden realization washed over me. I didn't need their permission anymore. Not to build, not to be successful, and certainly not just to exist. I arrived home at 7:15 p.m., ordered some Thai takeout, and ate it alone while staring blankly at the television screen. At 9 p.m., I pulled out the immaculate pair of work boots I had purchased specifically for this gala. They were from the Timberland Pro line, the exact same model I wear every day, but brand new and polished to a bright shine. I set them down right next to my suit, a charcoal gray Theory suit that cost $848. I had purchased it 3 days prior at the Nordstrom in Greenwich. The salesperson had asked what kind of event I was attending. A formal dinner, I told her. Oh, lovely. What line of work are you in? I'm a general contractor. She paused, looking a bit puzzled. Well, this suit is definitely a bit professional for that line of work. That's exactly the point, I replied. Now those boots rested right beside that high-end suit. Two distinct parts of the exact same person. I barely slept that night. I woke up at 2 a.m. and spent an hour in the bathroom practicing my acceptance speech, whispering the words quietly so I wouldn't disturb my neighbors. I had gone through 6 full drafts, and this was the final version. 380 words, timed to exactly 3 minutes and 20 seconds. It was a message about Samuel, about craftsmanship, about legacy, and about how the intrinsic value of your labor matters significantly more than any corporate title. There was no direct mention of my family, but the underlying message was loud and clear. I went back to bed and woke up naturally at 5:30 a.m. without needing an alarm. December 8th, 2025. The day everything completely shifted. The Wadsworth Atheneum Museum of Art is located in Hartford, about 85 miles from Greenwich. I left my apartment at 4:30 p.m., driving my Ford F250 pickup. When I pulled up to the entrance, the valet attendant looked completely surprised, given that the vast majority of guests were arriving in luxury sedans. I handed him a $10 tip. Inside, I was escorted directly to the honoree lounge. There were 6 award recipients in total, 4 men between 48 and 67, a 54-year-old woman, and then me at 28. One of the men struck up a conversation asking what I did. I'm a contractor, I told him. Oh, so you work in project management or oversight? No, I clarified. I own and operate a commercial construction firm. His expression changed instantly to pure surprise. How old are you? 28. Wow, that's incredibly impressive for your age. I just smiled and left it at that. At 6:45 p.m., the event coordinator stepped into the lounge. 15 minutes until showtime. Your families and guests are currently taking their seats. I glanced out toward the main ballroom. Somewhere out there, my parents were taking their seats at table 8, a designated sponsor table. They had checked in at 6:15 p.m. I knew because I'd verified the attendance sheet. They had absolutely no clue I was even in the building. At 6:52 p.m., my father opened the formal event program, flipping through the pages until he stopped abruptly on page 8. Every ounce of color instantly drained from his face. My mother leaned in closer. James, what is it? He handed the program over, pointing directly at the page. She looked down, her hand immediately flying over her mouth. There was my photo, a professional headshot taken right in my office. Right beside it, the text read, Amy Lowe, owner and chief contractor of Cornerstone Infrastructure, LLC, recipient of the Excellence in Preservation Award for the $12.5 million Fairfield County Historic Courthouse restoration. Justin noticed the commotion. What's going on? My father passed the program down to him. Justin stared at the page, then pulled out his phone, typing Cornerstone Infrastructure Connecticut into Google. My company website popped up immediately, showcasing our major projects and photos of me on active job sites wearing a hard hat and holding a clipboard, clearly directing the crews. He clicked over to the About Us page, reviewing my professional bio, my credentials, and my licensed trade numbers. He slid the screen over to show my parents. My mother whispered, her voice trembling, "This makes no sense. Amy works on a local road crew. She's just a traffic flagger making $22 an hour." My father ground his teeth together. "She never said a word to us. We completely assumed..." Justin kept scrolling, pulling up a regional news article from October titled, "Fairfield County Awards Massive Historic Restoration Contract to Local Firm." He read a quote aloud. Owner Amy Lowe, 28, states the project aims to honor the rich history of the structure and the highly skilled tradespeople who physically built it. An absolute heavy silence fell over Table 8. Doug Parsons, my father's high-profile client and the developer who had voted in favor of my project bid, leaned over from his seat. "Jim, is that brilliant young contractor your daughter? My goodness, I voted for her proposal on the Fairfield committee. I had absolutely no idea she was related to you. She is an absolute force in the industry." My father couldn't even find his voice to respond. The house lights began to dim, and an announcement echoed over the main PA system. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our Master of Ceremonies, Dr. Richard Aldrich." My father gripped my mother's hand tightly. "What are we supposed to do?" she whispered in a panic. "We sit here," my father muttered, "and pray to God she doesn't humiliate us in front of 300 people." Justin muttered under his breath. "We've already done that to ourselves." Dr. Richard Aldrich stepped up to the main podium. He was a distinguished silver-haired man in his early 60s who had served as the town leader for 15 years. "Our next recognition," he began, "celebrates true excellence in historical preservation. Constructed back in 1876, the Fairfield County Historic Courthouse had fallen into severe disrepair. Multiple corporate firms claimed the structure simply couldn't be saved within a reasonable budget. But one contractor, a remarkable young woman who learned the foundations of the trade from her grandfather, a master mason, envisioned something others missed. She saw a legacy and a history entirely worth preserving. Behind him, a massive projection screen came alive with a slideshow. It showed the courthouse in 1876 in all its glory, followed by images from 2024 showing crumbling masonry and shattered windows. Then, my detailed restoration blueprints and design layouts filled the screen, followed by the approved building permits displaying my name and license number, MC-0392156. Richard continued, his voice booming through the hall. She submitted the winning project proposal, valued at $12.5 million. At just 28 years old, she stands as the youngest commercial contractor in Connecticut history to secure a contract of this magnitude. The entire ballroom erupted into applause. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute privilege to present the Excellence in Preservation Award to the owner and chief contractor of Cornerstone Infrastructure LLC, Amy Lowe." The crowd went wild. I stepped out from the wings of the stage. My boots, those immaculate, polished Timberland work boots, made a distinct, echoing sound against the hardwood stage with every step. Camera flashes went off left and right as 300 people stood up to deliver a standing ovation. I looked over at Table 8. My father sat completely frozen. My mother still had her hand over her mouth, and Justin was just staring down at his phone. Then I looked over at Table 12, where my grandfather stood proud, tears streaming down his face, holding a hand over his heart. I walked up to the podium, shook hands with Richard, turned to face the massive crowd, and began my speech. "Thank you, everyone. I am incredibly honored to accept this recognition tonight. But I don't stand on this stage alone. I stand on the shoulders of everyone who ever taught me that building structures isn't just a job, it's a true calling." My grandfather, Samuel Linsky, spent 50 years working as a master mason. He taught me that your own two hands can shape a lasting legacy, that the integrity of the work matters infinitely more than any corporate title, and that you don't need anyone else's permission to build something of true value. All it takes is skill, integrity, and the sheer courage to carve your name into your work. When I first launched my firm 4 years ago, the skeptics were loud. I was young, I was a woman, and I came from a family background that placed its value entirely on a very different definition of success. But I learned something critical along the way. The people who doubt your potential don't matter. The people who recognize your true value are the ones who walk the path with you. This landmark structure, the Fairfield County Historic Courthouse, was raised back in 1876 by tradespeople whose names have long been forgotten, yet their physical work still stands proud today. By the time this restoration concludes in 2027, my hope is that when people walk through those historic doors, they will remember that someone cared enough to preserve it, that someone respected the past while building toward the future. My grandfather always told me, The completed structure speaks far louder than the name printed on a business card. I believe that with all my heart. But I've also come to understand that names matter. The name you choose to carry, the name you hold with pride, and the name you refuse to let be buried. To anyone who has ever been told that their line of work isn't good enough, smart enough, or valuable enough, this recognition belongs to you, to everyone who builds with their hands and their heart. Thank you. The room completely erupted into thunderous applause, a standing ovation that went on and on. I held the Crystal Award tightly in my hand. It felt heavy, beautifully etched with the words, Amy Lowe, Excellence in Preservation Award, 2025. As I began to step down from the stage, something completely unexpected happened. My grandfather stood up from his table and began walking toward the stage. His steps were slow and deliberate. The event staff looked a bit confused for a moment, but no one attempted to stop him. He was 82 years old after all. No one was going to block an elder. He walked right up to the podium and took hold of the microphone. The entire ballroom fell into a hush. He looked out at the 300 guests and began to speak. Excuse me, everyone. My name is Samuel Linsky. I'm Amy's grandfather. I wasn't scheduled to speak here tonight, but I'm 82 years old and I've kept quiet for far too long. That brilliant young woman up there is my granddaughter. Her true name is Amy Linsky Lowe. She has built something far greater than I ever could have imagined, and she has reclaimed the very family name her own father tried so hard to bury. 40 years ago, my son, James Lowe, who is sitting right over there at table 8, legally changed his name. He did it because he felt an overwhelming shame being the son of a manual laborer. He felt ashamed of these hands. He held up his own hands for the entire room to see, hands heavily lined with deep scars and thick calluses. These hands physically built half of the structures in Greenwich. These hands earned the money that paid for his college education. And yet, he viewed them as an embarrassment. Just 2 weeks ago at Thanksgiving dinner, he called Amy an embarrassment because she works in commercial construction, because she wears work boots, and because she dedicates herself to the exact same honest, dignified labor that he once did, back before he decided it wasn't good enough for his social standing. Amy had absolutely no idea I was going to stand up here and say this tonight, but I made a promise to myself that if she ever received the recognition she truly earned, I would make absolutely sure the truth was brought to light. The Linsky name is not an embarrassment. It represents a proud legacy of hard work, and she is carrying that legacy forward with honor. James, you are my son, and I love you. But you were entirely wrong. Tonight, in front of this entire room, I am setting the record straight. Our name, her name, is something to hold with absolute pride. He set the microphone down, turned around, walked back to table 12, and took his seat. The entire hall sat in a stunned, breathless silence for 5 seconds. And then, the applause started. It began with a few people, then grew louder and louder, until the entire room was on its feet, delivering a massive ovation for my grandfather and the truth he had just uncovered. I stood in the wings of the stage, watching the monitor screen with tears streaming down my face. 20 minutes later, while I was backstage taking official media photographs, my father appeared. Amy? His voice was incredibly tight, trying to control his anger. I turned around to face him. We need to talk right now. I looked him in the eye. No, Dad, we don't. At least not tonight. You completely humiliated me in front of everyone, he snapped. My clients, my professional colleagues. I set my award down and took a step closer to him. I didn't humiliate you. I simply accepted an award that I earned through hard work. You humiliated yourself the moment you decided I was completely insignificant. His face flushed a deep red. You lied to us. I never lied to you once. You simply never bothered to ask. You let us go on believing. You chose to believe what you wanted. I cut him off. You chose to believe that I couldn't possibly become anyone outside of the narrow box you created for me. My mother stepped up right behind him. Amy, please, can we just sit down and talk about this? Mom, not right now. I have media obligations to handle, and there are people here who genuinely want to celebrate my success. You two can head home. My mother started to cry. We are so proud of you. Stop, I said firmly, cutting her off. Don't do that. Don't play that part right now. I needed you to be proud of me 2 years ago. I needed you to be proud of me 4 years ago when I first launched my company. Where were you when I secured my very first commercial contract? Silence. My father tried to find an excuse. We didn't know. You didn't want to know. I countered. And there is a massive difference between the two. I turned my back on them and walked away, heading toward my grandfather, my project foreman Paul, and my attorney Victoria, the people who had truly stood by me and watched me grow. Behind me, I heard my mother call out, "Amy, please." I didn't turn around. It wasn't because I didn't love them. It was because I had finally learned to love myself more. 15 minutes later, Justin found me. "Amy, hey." I was still standing with my grandfather Paul and Victoria. Justin approached slowly, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. I want to say I'm truly sorry. I had absolutely no idea about the company, none of it. I looked at him calmly. "I know you didn't, Justin. In the last 4 years, how many times did you ever ask me about my work? And I mean truly ask. Not to minimize it, not to joke about it, but out of genuine curiosity?" He went completely silent. "That's what I thought," I said. "Can we try to start over?" he asked quietly. "Maybe down the road, but not tonight. Tonight, I'm celebrating with the people who have actually been in my corner." Justin looked over at my grandfather, then at Paul and Victoria. He understood. "I'm going to head out," he said. He turned to leave, paused, and looked back at me. "For what it's worth, that speech was incredible. I'm sorry I failed to see how amazing you really are." "Thank you, Justin." As he walked away, a sudden wave of emotion hit me. It wasn't anger, and it wasn't some petty sense of revenge. It was just a deep sadness for all the years of connection we had completely missed out on. My grandfather reached into his pocket and handed me something. It was a vintage photograph from that attic storage box. 1985. My father at 15 and my grandfather at 42. Both of them were standing on a scaffolding rig, completely covered in mortar dust with their arms around each other, smiling brightly. Written on the back in my grandfather's handwriting, Linsky and Son Masonry, The Morrison Project, Summer 1985. So proud of my boy. My grandfather's voice was incredibly soft. This was him before he forgot his roots. He was a phenomenal worker, Amy, strong, proud. Then something shifted, maybe college, or maybe the world convinced him it wasn't enough. I don't know. But he used to look at me the exact way you look at me right now. His voice cracked. I truly miss that boy. I held the photograph, looking at my father's young face back before shame took over. "I'm not asking you to forgive him tonight," my grandfather noted gently. "But maybe somewhere down the road. He's my son, and you're my granddaughter, and I love you both." I tucked the photograph safely into my wallet. "Thank you, Grandpa." I left the gala at 9:30 p.m., saying my goodbyes to my grandfather, Paul, and Victoria, and headed out to the valet to grab my truck. I sat inside the cab for 5 minutes with the engine turned off. The Crystal Award sat on the passenger seat, carefully wrapped inside my coat. My phone was buzzing with 89 unread notifications, but I didn't open them. I just sat there in the quiet, absorbing the full weight of the moment. The exhaustion, the relief, the pride, the lingering sadness, and the hope. I finally started the truck and began the drive home, a route that takes about an hour and 25 minutes, traveling west on I-84, south on I-91, and cutting across Route 15 back to Stamford. I pulled into my driveway at 10:55 p.m. I brought the award inside, placing it on the coffee table before deciding to move it up to the display shelf right next to the framed picture of my grandfather and me from that summer back in 2009. It was the perfect spot. I stood there in my $800 suit and my polished steel-toed boots, and for the very first time in my life, a profound sense of clarity hit me. I didn't have to prove myself to anyone ever again. I was enough, and I had always been enough. They were just entirely blind to it. The following morning, I woke up to over 200 notifications. The regional news outlets, the Hartford Courant, the Connecticut Post, the Fairfield Citizen, all ran features on the event. The headlines read, "Young Contractor Secures Major Recognition, Sparking Emotional Defense from Grandfather." Extended relatives sent a barrage of text messages filled with congratulations, confusion, and demands to know why I had never shared my success with them. I responded to the ones who had genuinely supported me over the years and ignored the rest. Then my phone rang from an unrecognized number. "Hello, Ms. Lowe. This is the Hartford Business Journal. We're putting together our annual 30 Under 30 feature and would love to run an exclusive profile on you." 2 months later, toward the end of January 2026, my firm was absolutely thriving. We had just secured 2 additional commercial contracts totaling $6.8 million, with a third major deal currently in negotiations. I had hired 4 more field workers, bringing my total staff to 39 employees, and we officially expanded our corporate office space to 1,600 square feet. And something else shifted too. On January 15th, a letter arrived at my office. It was a 2-page handwritten letter from my father. The note read, "Amy, I don't even know where to begin this other than to say, I am deeply sorry. I was entirely wrong about you, wrong about your profession, and wrong about what actually carries true value in this life. I spent 40 years running away from my past because I falsely believed it dictated my worth. But you proved to me that our roots are simply a part of who we are. You took the name I buried and brought it back to a place of absolute respect. You built exactly what I lacked the courage to build. I am so incredibly proud of you. I should have told you this years ago, and I'm saying it now even though I know it might be too late. Can we please sit down and talk?" Dad, I waited 13 days before sending a brief text response. "Let's grab a coffee." We met up on January 28th at a Starbucks in Stamford. We spent 2 hours talking, and he broke down in tears, the very first time I had ever seen him cry in my entire life. He apologized for everything, the Thanksgiving dinner blowout, the years of subtle dismissal, changing the family name, and for completely failing to truly see me. "I forgive you," I told him openly. 但现在情况不同了，我不再需要寻求你的认可。如果你想建立关系，必须按我的规矩来。He agreed instantly, and then surprised me by asking if he could visit one of my active job sites. I was caught off guard, but I agreed. On February 5th, he drove out to the Fairfield project and spent 3 hours simply watching me work, seeing firsthand the deep respect my crews held for my leadership. Afterward, he looked at me and said, "You are a far better contractor than I ever was. Our relationship isn't fully repaired, and we might never become the idealized perfect family we could have been, but at the very least we are finally talking." Justin officially joined my firm on February 1st, stepping into a role as our corporate financial advisor and accepting a 50% pay cut from his investment banking salary to do so. He is focused on mastering the mechanics of the business, proving his dedication every day. Our daily interactions are professional and structured, but that familiar, light-hearted sibling dynamic is slowly starting to return. My mother now calls my phone every single Thursday evening at 7 p.m. sharp, a routine she started back in mid-December. Our conversations began as surface-level small talk, but they've gradually grown deeper. She started seeing a therapist, focusing on unpacking her own history of compliance and enabling behavior. On January 22nd, she visited my office for the first time ever. When she saw the display of industry awards, my project photos, and met my administrative team, she burst into tears. Back on December 20th, 2025, I officially established the Lansky Skilled Trades Scholarship, backing it with an initial funding pool of $250,000. The program provides $50,000 in funding spread over 4 years to students from working-class backgrounds who are dedicated to mastering a trade. Within 3 weeks, we received 47 applications. Our very first recipient was a 19-year-old woman named Maria Gonzalez from Bridgeport. Her mother had worked 2 jobs as a domestic cleaner for 20 years to raise 3 children on her own. Maria was determined to become a master mason to honor the memory of her uncle, a skilled builder in the Dominican Republic who had lost his life in a tragic construction accident back in 2019. She is dedicated to preserving his legacy through the trade. On January 16th, we held a small reception at our headquarters to celebrate the launch. Maria, her family, my grandfather, and my entire office staff were there. I delivered a brief 3-minute speech. Afterward, Maria's mother, Rosa, reached out and took my hand. Her skin was noticeably rough and heavily calloused from 2 decades of hard labor. She looked at me and said, "You gave my daughter the right to hold her head high and be proud of her hands, the exact same way your grandfather did for you." I thought to myself in that moment, this is it. This is exactly why we build, not just to raise structures, but to build futures and secure legacies, so the next generation never has to apologize for the honest work they do. By late January, the Fairfield Courthouse project reached 45% completion, tracking well ahead of our original schedule. I was working alongside a new apprentice named Sophie, a 22-year-old who had joined our crew on January 6th. The 2 of us were taking a lunch break on the tailgate of my truck, eating sandwiches we'd grabbed from a local food truck. She looked over at me. "Amy, do you mind if I ask you a personal question?" Go right ahead, I said. When you were first starting out in the trades, did your family support your path, or did you have to figure it all out on your own? I paused for a moment, looking down at my boots. They were the exact same Timberlands I had worn to the gala dinner, but now they were broken in, carrying scuffs and cement streaks from 8 weeks of hard site work. They fit perfectly now. Not at first, I told her. They thought I was making a massive mistake and wasting my potential, but I didn't wait around for their approval. I built this company because I believed in the work. Eventually, some of them turned around. My dad and I just grabbed a coffee 2 weeks ago, and it was our first genuine conversation in years. Some people never change their minds, and honestly, that's fine too. But regardless of what they thought, I built something that is entirely my own, something real, substantial, and meaningful. That takes a lot of courage, Sophie said. I shook my head with a smile. No, it's just honest labor, that's all it is. The workday wrapped up at 4:30 p.m. Sophie waved goodbye as she headed to her car. See you tomorrow, Amy. I stayed behind for a bit, taking a slow walk through the active job site to inspect the masonry progress. I ran my hand over the fresh brickwork, checking the mortar lines, then took a few steps back to take in the structure. Half restored, it looked absolutely beautiful. A deep, quiet sense of pride washed over me. On my drive home, I passed my parents' street again. The old heavy feeling in my chest was completely gone. There was only peace, and maybe even a little warmth. Home finally felt like a real sanctuary. Sitting in my office on a late January afternoon, the display on the wall tells the entire story of my journey. On the main award shelf, the 2025 Excellence in Preservation Award, the 2024 Women in Construction Recognition, and my official Hartford Business Journal 30 Under 30 certificate. Inside a custom display case rests Samuel's original trowel, beautifully engraved with the words, Samuel Lansky, 1943 to 2026. He is still very much alive and here to witness the legacy unfold. Arranged across the wall are 12 framed photographs, images from the gala dinner, Samuel delivering his speech, the scholarship launch event, active site progress updates, and team celebrations. And right in the center rests a framed quote I selected right after the gala. Legacy isn't something you're handed, it's something you build. Samuel Lansky. The exact words he spoke to me when I was 12 years old. Our official company signage was updated on January 5th. Cornerstone Infrastructure, LLC, Amy Lansky Lowe, owner and licensed contractor, registered commercial general contractor, number M, C392156. Honoring the legacy of Lansky Masonry. Established, 1975. When my grandfather saw that final line printed on the sign, he openly wept. Resting on my desk are the active design blueprints for 3 upcoming projects. A bright yellow hard hat embroidered with A. Lansky Lowe, and a coffee mug my crew gifted me that reads, Best Boss. On my wrist, I wear Samuel's vintage 1985 Timex watch, its leather strap worn soft from years of use. I turn the dial to wind it every single morning. There is also a new picture frame on my desk, added on January 20th. It holds a photo of me, my grandfather, and Paul from the night of the gala, all dressed up and smiling brightly. The handwritten caption underneath reads, My Real Foundation. I'm still wearing those same work boots. The only difference now is that when I walk into a room, people stand up. It isn't because I proved my family wrong, it's because I proved to myself that I was right all along. The Lansky name isn't buried anymore. It's stamped on my commercial license, printed on my business cards, and displayed on public building permits that will stand for the next 100 years. My grandfather taught me that your worth shouldn't be dictated by a corporate title your parents approve of. It is measured by the legacy you physically build with your own 2 hands. I built all of this, not to make a point, and not out of spite, but simply because it is exactly who I am. It is who I have always been. My name is Amy Lansky Lowe. I am a commercial contractor. I own an independent, multi-million-dollar firm. I wear work boots, and my hands get dirty on the job. I build structures designed to endure, and I am incredibly proud. I'm not proud out of arrogance or because I won an argument. I'm proud because I never stopped believing in my own potential. It's late January now. My company is expanding, my family is gradually healing, and my grandfather is right here to see it all unfold. Every single morning when I wake up, I don't have to hide who I am anymore. That is the true victory. It isn't the physical award or proving people wrong, it's the absolute freedom to be entirely true to yourself. These boots have traveled a long, difficult road, from my grandfather's residential site when I was 12, to that painful Thanksgiving dinner where I was labeled an embarrassment, and all the way to that grand stage where 300 people stood to applaud my work. And now, they walk across my own active job sites, operating by my own rules, building my own legacy. If you are currently hiding your true self, or holding back your potential because someone told you that your path isn't good enough, I need you to hear this. Stop holding back. Go out there and build it anyway. When your success becomes too massive to ignore, they will have no choice but to see it. And by the time they finally do see it, you won't even find yourself needing their approval anymore, because you will have already discovered the only approval that ever truly mattered.